One of the main things that you do when you're studying physics is learn how, if you have some data, you can learn a lot more from it. You can extrapolate from it what the implications that are for the information that you have. So when you have something like privacy and security, being able to see information from that lens has really helped me.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to a Future of Data Security episode. Today I'm speaking with Pilar Garcia, Director of Privacy and Security at HelpScout. Pilar, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
So first things first, how did you get into data privacy and security?
So I have a background in physics and mathematics. And when I went into it, I always thought my plan A is to stay in academia, do research. My plan B is to do something in tech. By the time I was about halfway through my master's, I decided that the academia path wasn't actually for me and that I needed to actually decide what plan B was. I did know a bit of coding, but I didn't like it as a career. And then I got very lucky because I was able to meet the head of security of a security company. And upon talking to him for hours, I realized that it was the perfect fit for me. And I was very lucky that he thought that I was a very good candidate for the career. So he hired me and mentored me.
And what do you think from your background in physics made you a right candidate for security later down the road, data specifically privacy security?
One of the main things that you do when you're studying physics is learn how, if you have some data, you can learn a lot more from it. You can extrapolate from it what the implications that are for the information that you have. So when you have something like privacy and security, being able to see information from that lens has really helped me. At the same time, a lot of the classes that I took in my master's were related to computability, computational complexity, and all those things, which means that I was able to get a real understanding of why encryption and a lot of data security works from the foundations.
That makes total sense. And have you found other people like you with similar background, or you're the odd person out?
I think that there are as many backgrounds as people doing privacy and security. I have found other people that come from mathematics, things like that. It is fairly popular. But I don't know. I also find people that were doing customer support and got more and more interested. So they ended up getting into there. I think we're a very welcoming crowd. And it's such a broad topic that whatever you know will help you build on it.
And how has the data security landscape changed since you started?
I think a very big one is the way we think and view the cloud. When I started, I still heard a lot of, oh, it's not the cloud, it's someone else's computer. At this point, I don't think I need to tell you, we all just assume things will be on the cloud. Things being on the cloud is not considered a big issue anymore. It's the given. So we are working within this new assumption that things are unlikely to be local. We need to protect them from the cloud point of view.
Can you share a little bit about the defining moment in your data security career?
A defining moment for me was when GDPR went into effect. And it's not even necessarily about the restrictions that GDPR put in place. We can argue the pros, the cons that it had, but I definitely noticed at an industry level that for a lot of companies, it was the first time that they actually thought about privacy. It was with GDPR that I saw a move from talking about the security team and now talking about the security and privacy team. I think GDPR, for all its good things, for all its bad things, did help elevate privacy into something companies have to care about, whether they want to or not.
And would you say it's the fines or some other specific aspect of GDPR that finally had people pay attention to it? What were the key underpinnings of it that got people's attention?
I don't think it's necessarily the fines because, at least from what I saw, not only from the company I was working at, but all the peers I was interacting with, even before it went fully into effect, nobody wanted to take the risk of breaking the law. But also, it may be things that people hadn't thought about until then. It gave people something to think about, to start going to. Because I believe that with things like this, following the law is the bare minimum. You should strive to do better than that. But this does put the entire topic on your radar.
Right. No, that makes sense. Switching gear, what's your approach to building an effective data privacy and security team?
So I very strongly believe in what I call people first security. People first security means that we should move away from seeing the user as adversarial. I still hear within other peers in the security industry things like the user is the weakest link, things like that. When you build a security and privacy function that thinks this way, you're not only not giving enough credit to the rest of the people, they will see you as the adversary as well. And then it's going to be a lot harder for them to want to work with you. If you make it clear that you're there to empower them, to give them the tools to do the right thing, to give them the knowledge to do the right thing, you will have an entire company that will feel comfortable coming to you when something's come up. Even if it's a very small thing, they will report it and you'll be able to catch it right away. Sometimes you'll find that, okay, this is a system or a process that this other person spends their entire day working in. And because we have this good, proper relationship, they are thinking about privacy and security beyond what I am dictating. And they're like, hey, I was thinking maybe we could improve this thing for privacy here and there. I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't understand the system well enough. So it's great to have that input from the people who truly understand it.
It sounds like, in other words, you're saying, hey, if we have a people first or people centric approach, people are all part of the same team, they all want the same thing, they're going to do the right thing when it comes to privacy, and we've got to make them part of that journey.
Correct. I very strongly believe in proper security training because we see a lot of security training that is just to check a box. But if you do proper security training, people will find it interesting. They will want to learn more. They will want to do the better thing instead of go around it. And at the same time, I also believe that if someone does do something wrong, it's not their fault for doing the wrong thing. It's mine for not giving them the right tools.
Right, that makes sense. How do you balance innovation and risk in data security? A lot of companies want to do new things. They want to go fast. The CEO wants things to happen. So how do you balance this drive for innovation with risk?
There are a couple of things. I think that the most important one for this one is to have an actual good path of communication with the rest of the company. I know that as the person in charge of privacy and security, it is my job to identify the absolute best answer for privacy and security, but I will not always get my way. That ultimately, I need to give my own input as clearly as possible. I will not get bogged down in a million technical details that maybe the business team will have a bit of trouble understanding. And especially be very clear about communicating the risks. And those risks need to be balanced with other business needs, with other business risks. So, for example, you said move fast. Maybe the risk of releasing a new feature really fast is that we won't have enough time to get it into this year's penetration test. And that is my security risk. But I also understand that as a business, maybe the risk of not doing it that fast means that our competitor will, and we will have issues as a business. So being able to really communicate what the risks are, so when they are put in the balance, people really understand what's going on.
What's a common misconception about data security and privacy you often encounter?
So this is not exactly a misconception, but something that I do see people approaching wrong a lot. And that is not being specific enough or thinking through the actual problem and threat that you're trying to solve. So, for example, if you say something like, what problem are you trying to solve? I want to make us more secure. That's not a problem. Like, you can install something and you won't be able to know if it's working because you won't even be able to know what it's supposed to be doing. And at the same time, at best, you will end up with gaps. And at worst, you will end up with what we call security theater. Things that sound very nice on paper, but are not actually productive.
Yeah, we've all heard of the innovation theater. Now you're saying there's the security, the privacy theater as well.
Yeah. So for every new security thing that you want to do, I always do a bit of an informal threat modeling. That means we need to really define what the threat that we're trying to stop is. You cannot just say, imagine if somebody bad did something bad. They'll be like, okay, let's think. We have this person, this is their goal, this is their resources. Would this measure actually stop that? No. They can just get the computer offline and my quick switch is not going to help, for example. I have an example that I was thinking about through all of this, and that's MFA. MFA is great. It is not the answer for absolutely everything. So, if I run a bit of a threat modeling exercise, what is my threat? Am I concerned that if the service has a data breach, those passwords can be abused to get into the service? Yes. Therefore, MFA is a good solution. Am I concerned that someone may have a spear phishing attack and they're communicating, they've been convinced that the other person is IT? Will a password like TOTP MFA help? No, because the person is already so deep in that they will also text the TOTP. My risk is possibly the first one, and MFA will definitely solve that risk. But I cannot then be very surprised that it didn't solve the second one.
That makes sense. So on top of the people first or people-centric approach, you're also advocating for a risk-based, threat-based analysis in terms of the prioritization of the program.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone starting in data security and privacy today?
So what I have found is that most of us working in privacy and security really like what we're doing. We tend to see it a bit more than just our job, and it's something we're pretty passionate about. And part of what that means is that I am very open to mentor people. I have done it. A lot of my peers are open to mentor people. So don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Don't worry that your credentials aren't this or that. Reach out to us. I think sooner rather than later, you will find someone who will want to spend a lot of time sharing all these things that we find very interesting.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience. Did you have some good mentors yourself coming in the space?
Yes.
Can you share maybe one key insight? Because I find with mentors, it's always like, can I learn from my mentor about a mistake that they've made and maybe I'll be spared the same mistake? Can you share a story maybe around that?
So if we're talking about something in the side of like a mistake of sorts to learn from, after the first while that I spent working with the person that I mentioned in the original story, it became clear that he was extremely good at technical security things, but policy was a bit of a weaker point for him. So at the same time, I wanted to be a good teammate, and I didn't necessarily want to become fully an expert on the same niche that we already had covered, but it also uncovered for me a whole other side of privacy and security that I had to find resources on my own. Because they were a lot more important, in my opinion, than they were in his opinion.
We talked a little bit in the preparation about Gen AI, and you said, hey, that's the theme of the moment. Everyone's talking about it. Is there anything in particular that comes to mind that would be really important for people to consider when we're talking about data privacy security, or perhaps more interesting than other things we're seeing?
From the point of view of privacy, that something is using AI doesn't mean that you are automatically fitting and teaching the major algorithm that you're talking about. We are talking about AI like a one size fits all, but there are very different approaches to it. There are some more local ones. There are the big name that we all know. So if you are concerned about your privacy and AI, do spend some time learning what the particular tool that you're thinking about will do with their data, because there may be many different answers. It's not just the monster under the bed. And from the tooling point of view, if we started seeing some pretty interesting uses of AI for security, they're starting to be like, okay, we can have this add-on on your monitoring system that will try to find trends and alert you before they become a full issue and things like that. So on that side, I'm very excited to see how that comes up.
Great.
How that develops.
The question that I think is most interesting for this podcast, what's the future of data security?
So splitting a little bit, data security, data privacy. On the privacy side of things, we've already seen more and more jurisdictions adding privacy regulations. I think that we are moving towards a point where every place will have one. I sure hope they continue to all be congruent with each other, because the moment they contradict each other, the service providers are going to have a lot of trouble committing to them. I still think they're on the pretty initial phases. I think they're going to evolve a lot. I don't know exactly what direction it's going to take, but we can have some ideas. The original version of these regulations is really broad, and the more big companies find loopholes around them, the more they get amended and fine-tuned. So before any big changes, I think we'll continue to see more regulations that cover more and more of the map or whatever's missing, and also updates to the existing ones so they get a lot more fine-tuned. From the other point of view, I think we're going to get into some very interesting times with phishing and AI. There's already been some initial issues with that. Right now, it takes a lot of input from someone to be able to convincingly mock their voice, mock their mannerisms, things like that. But we already have a base for that. So it's not a stretch to think that AI is going to crank phishing to a dimension that we have not yet seen.
That's really interesting, and I think it's happening. How do you think companies, big and small, can prepare for that?
At this particular point, training and communication is going to be one of the most important tools I have. Convincing everybody that if a request looks in any way, shape, or form unusual, report it, verify somewhere else, make sure that it makes sense. Reminding people, no, nobody will actually call you on your phone to ask for anything, so ignore those all the time. I don't think we have technological tools to be able to tell apart when the voice is real or AI at this point, for example. So education, making sure that people know they will not get in trouble for reporting something that wasn't an issue. I like to tell people, I don't care if I get 99 things that were not an issue, if that means I catch the one that was.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have to cover today. So before we wrap, if people want to follow you along with your work, what's the best place for them to go?
You can find me on LinkedIn as Pilar Garcia, along with HelpScout, which is the place where I work right now.
Great. Well, it's been a really fun conversation, Pilar. I've learned a lot. Let's keep in touch, and thank you again for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.